Okay, here we go. Welcome to the live stream. Welcome to the European Experience Center. My name is Marcel Ebbenhorst. I'm the manager for production print within Kyocera Europe. And today I'm proud to give you present you a very special session where we would like to give you a warm welcome to our first guest speaker, Marco Boer, Vice President of IT Strategies, who will present a bit more about the impact of the pandemic and how that leads to new demographic targets and what kind of potential opportunities that will create for print. So, Marco, a warm welcome to you.
All right, thank you, Marcel. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marco Boer. I am going to give you a view about the effects of the pandemic on the print industry. Some of it will be slightly slanted towards the US market where I'm based, but I think it will apply equally to what's happening in Europe. So first of all, COVID has had an enormous amount of challenges in the market today. A lot of people suffered, but a lot of companies did very well. And they did well because of certain trends that are developing inside the print market. So let's talk about some of these challenges first. First of all, if you look at the biggest challenge in our industry today is the rising cost of paper and the lack of available paper. Without paper, we can't print and we can't sell anything. The paper issues are such that the genesis, the origin of why we're in the situation we are in now, the cause of that happened many, many years ago. Basically, we had too many paper mills shutting down, converting into other types of paper production, tissue, packaging papers, and the likes. And so in the printing and writing industry, our commercial papers are frankly very constrained. And now you add on top of that the rising energy costs, and all of a sudden paper is getting to be very expensive, and there's just not enough of it. We have a second challenge, and that's a challenge a bit more in the US market than in Europe, but we are starting to see a very big lack of available labor. There's just not enough workers who want to come into the print industry. It's a little bit better in Europe because salaries are more even across all the various jobs. In the US market, most print operators earn somewhere between $15 to $20 an hour at a time when companies like Amazon are paying $30 an hour or more. So we're just losing a lot of people to other industries, and that's a significant problem. In Europe, by the way, this is going to rear its head starting in about 2026. After the last big economic recession in 2008, the birth rate declined significantly, both in Europe and in the US. And the first of those babies that were born after 2008 will start entering the workforce in about 2026. And at that point, we'll have about 15% fewer workers. And so the print industry is going to be competing with all these other industries for effectively fewer workers. So the need to automate is going to become more important than ever. And then last, we are at a stage now where there is a tremendous amount of consolidation among print providers or commercial printers. And there's a few reasons why that's happening. One is if you can't get paper, you might be out of business. So that's one, and your assets will be hopefully acquired by somebody else. But there's another reason, and that is tied to the fact that private equity, so these are basically very rich individuals looking to get a better return on their money, they have discovered the print industry, and they love the print industry because they seem to think that it's very inefficient, and it's inefficient because it's very regional. So there's very few super large print providers. Most of them are very small, and if you roll them up and take 10 small ones and make them into one bigger one, you could automate a lot more of the production, and you could reduce the amount of labor and hence make more profit. And so that's another reason why we're seeing such heavy consolidation at the moment. All of this leads to a problem in that our customers' budgets to buy print tend to be relatively flat. Just because the cost of paper is going up doesn't mean that they're going to find more money somewhere else to pay for more print. And so the natural reaction is, well, just print less. And that's exactly what's happening. Most of that is affecting offset print. And one of the significant reasons behind that is if there's no paper available, we really cannot have any waste at all. None of us like waste, but particularly now, if there's no paper available, we are just likely to print what we need when we need it. And so the run lengths that we're printing are coming down significantly right now. And all of that has a very positive connotation on inkjet printing, because all of a sudden our customers are saying, this is what I need today. I need it again printed in 2 days or 4 days, but I don't need a lot of it. I need it to be very timely. And so the issue relating to setup time and plate manufacturing and all that for offset becomes more and more problematic as these run lengths get shorter and shorter. So in the end, it's very good news for inkjet printing, because all of these trends combined basically say that what does need to get printed has to be of significantly higher value. And in the first instance, of course, it's timeliness. In the second instance is you're going to get more versioning and ultimately more variable data. So let's look at the paper issue in a little bit more depth. This is a US figure, but I think it applies equally in terms of the trend lines to Europe. If you look at the demand for paper in the last, 2012 through 2018, on average, we're seeing about a 3% decline. And again, that's mainly because offset print volumes, which compose the majority of this volume, have been in decline as people shift more and more to electronic communication. If you look carefully, you'll notice that there was a 14% decline in demand for paper in 2019. That was way before COVID. So what caused that decline? And there's a simple answer to it. In the 2012 to 2018 period, and particularly really towards the latter end of that time frame, we saw a huge amount of very inexpensive paper imports coming into Europe and into the US from Asia, specifically Indonesia, where they brought online these giant paper making machines. That caused prices to go down significantly as these Far East paper manufacturers were trying to gain share. The implication of that was that price points for paper reached such a low level that many of the European paper mills and US paper mills basically said, mea culpa, we give up, we're exiting the commercial printing paper business. And that's exactly what happened. And so as those European paper mills switched over to packaging papers or tissue papers or shut down altogether, what happened was that the price of paper started to rise. All of a sudden, after years of decline, the price per ton of paper started to go up in 2019. To the point where basically these flat print budgets couldn't afford to buy as much print. Then we had COVID hit, and of course, COVID, we didn't go into the office, we didn't buy print for about 6 months starting in 2020. And so those numbers went down even more. And as you forecast out, the paper mills tell us that effectively they expect the decline to moderate a little bit, but it will still decline. So the upshot is that over a period of about 10 years, we have lost almost 45% of our print volumes in the commercial print industry. Not good overall. However, again, what remains has to be more valuable. And in fact, if you look at it not from a paper volume perspective, but you look at it in terms of a euro perspective, this picture that you'll get is nowhere near as bad. In fact, many of the commercial printers, as a result of shifting more and more of their volume to digital printing, are getting to be more profitable. So it's really not as dire as it seems. It's very dire if you're in the offset side, but it's actually very good news for inkjet. In fact, the inkjet business continued to grow even during the COVID times. So the big question that everybody has now is, all right, we know we have a problem with paper. When is this going to stabilize? And what I'm here to tell you is that none of us really know, right? Our crystal ball is only as good as the next person's crystal ball. However, there are a few trends that we watch for. Number one is we do expect that we'll see a start again of imported paper coming into both Europe and the US as soon as these containers settle a little bit. And so once more paper becomes available, what you'll see in the first instance is during 2022 is a little bit better availability. I don't think, however, that we're going to see price decreases in paper, particularly because our energy costs have gone up significantly and our shipping costs are still extremely high. So the best we can hope for in 2022 is maybe some stability in paper availability, but you're not going to see any price decrease during the next 9 months or so. Ultimately, we also want to watch the paper mills and their investments. There are a few, very few mills that are starting to remanufacture paper for the printing and writing paper industry. But whatever they do is going to take a year and a half or more to really have any impact at all. So the bottom line is we're still going to be constrained on paper, which means that printing prices are going to remain very high. I talked to you about labor. This is a chart you won't really be able to see, but this is the US birth rate from the beginning of 1900 through now. And the key takeaway is what I mentioned to you earlier. In 2008, during that recession, we had about 500,000 fewer babies born in the US. By the way, that number in terms of trend line is very similar in Europe. And so we are looking at a demographic cliff starting in about 2026. And when that happens, you're not going to be able to find people to run your presses. Now, it's a little bit different in Europe today, where people are still, through apprenticeship, training offset press operators. In the US, it's almost non-existent. And so what's happening is a press operator, an offset press operator in the US is getting about $38 an hour. A digital press operator is getting about $20, $22 an hour. So it's almost half the wages. And a digital press operator can run multiple digital presses, whereas an offset press requires typically at least 2 operators. So anyway, you can see what's happening is that as the volumes come down, it fits better and better on digital printing. And of course, digital printing is going to have a lower running cost overall. So yes, people will say, well, inkjet ink is more expensive than offset ink. It's true, and it's going to remain true for the foreseeable future. However, if you factor in all of these other costs, including that rising paper cost and the rising labor costs, et cetera, and lack of labor, you can see how things start to shift more and more towards inkjet. Private equity. I mentioned to you earlier that those are the companies that are investing in the print industry, and it's got some significant impacts. Some of you may know a company in the US called R. Donnelley. It's the largest commercial printer in the world. During the beginning of COVID, this publicly traded company had a value of about $1 per share. It just got sold after a heated bidding battle for $11.50 a share. So the value of this company went up almost 11-fold in a period of less than 18 months. And so the question is, why? Why did all of a sudden the print industry become so valuable at a time when I've just told you that we're having paper problems, we're having labor problems, and what's causing this? And the simple answer is, again, the print industry is highly fragmented. And so if I can take many of these smaller companies, put them together and get rid of 11 accounting offices and consolidate those into one, get rid of 11 IT departments, consolidate those into one, have a little bit better purchasing power as a result of being larger, all of that matters a lot. And it has an implication on everybody else, because what happens is they are going to force automation, whether we like it or not. It's painful, right? Because we're going to be seeing even more job losses as this happens. However, it will make us far more efficient, and as an industry, ultimately will become more profitable. Now, this has a negative implication on those commercial printers that are not being acquired. So if you're a family-owned business and you have, let's say, 10 million euro in revenue, you too are going to have to become more automated and find those same efficiency gains. And this is an interesting challenge, because if you don't invest in new digital printing equipment and new finishing equipment and the like, yes, you have a lower capital base, but you're not going to be as competitive. And these bigger shops that are run by private equity money are going to be more competitive in terms of pricing. And so it really is putting a universal amount of pressure on our print industry to continue to reinvest, even though there's all of these other challenges, because if we don't, we're just going to fall behind, and it's not going to end well. So that in turn is driving up the demand for digital production printing. I can tell you right now that the demand is so strong that most of the equipment manufacturers are having trouble keeping up with demand. And that's partially because of supply chain issues, right? There's not enough computer chips available. But in the end, everybody's watching very carefully as to how they can ramp up to meet all of this growing need. So it's good news for both modern offset, but more particularly digital production printing, right? Because we want that efficiency. So the bottom line on this COVID pandemic is, number one, it is shifting dramatically the interest in how people buy print. You know, we've always been moving to these shorter runs, but we've now really reached a stage where everybody wants just in time. I only want to buy what I need. I want to eliminate all this waste because I just can't afford it. There's not enough paper. We want our print to be more relevant. And again, that ties back to that timeliness. And I'm going to order more frequently, which, by the way, becomes a problem if you are running your workflow in the back of your head using an Excel sheet, right? Trying to figure out where to put these jobs. You won't be able to keep up as we go from 10 jobs a day to 25 jobs a day to 50 or 100 or even more jobs a day. So this automation is truly critical. The paper cost increases, by the way, have an interesting effect also on the cost difference between running a job on an offset press and a digital press. Yes, offset ink is going to be less expensive. However, as the cost of paper increases as a share of the total price of getting a piece of print, that means that the cost attributed to the ink and the printing part of it actually decreases a little bit. And so that means that proportionally, the cost difference between printing something on offset versus printing something on digital is going to shrink. And that's going to accelerate even more shifts of volume ultimately to digital printing. So in the end, when we look at all these variables, including the fact that digital printing requires less label, all of this now has resulted in a long-term trend of shifting from offset to digital printing and accelerating that trend as a result of COVID. So it's a good time to be in this business. There's certainly a lot of money to be made in digital printing, but you do have to reinvest in order to be able to partake in that. So I feel, frankly, more positive now than I would have even 12 months ago about the future of our industry, because we really are seeing these shifts accelerate, and we do see people making a lot of money, provided that they're efficient and provided that they're able to help their customers who buy print with a more consultative approach. Let us help you print only what you need when you need it. It's a big change in business model. It's a big change in culture. But if you can adapt to that, I think you're going to do very well in the coming years. So with that, let me pause and see if there's any question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marco. Very interesting, as usual, a very interesting topic, and also good landscape about what is really, from a demographic point of view, happening in the market right now. You mentioned about opportunities for digital connected to the labor cost, mostly when you discussed it about the small and medium type of print service providers. So do they see that need as well?
Well, again, it's a little different in Europe than it is in the US, right? Because your wages are more level across all the various job categories. But whether or not that's an issue for you today or starting in 2026, I would think that the earlier you address the ability to reduce your labor costs, right, through moving more towards digital and more automation, the better off you're going to be. Because in this time of complexity, and it is far more complicated, by the way, to run a print shop now than it would have been even 18 months ago. We're managing on a day-to-day basis, probably 50% of our energy goes to managing the paper issue and a little bit on the labor side. But that labor piece is going to increase. So the earlier you can address that, the better off you're going to be.
So with regards to the automation part, so if you look at most printers at the moment, do you think they are capable of implementing this full integrated workflow? Or would that be an opportunity for manufacturers like Kyocera as well?
Well, it's a little bit of both, right? It's a lot of it has to do with the mindset and the culture of the owner of the print shop, right? You'll see probably half of them who will say, you know what, I'm at a certain age where I really don't want to risk a lot of my own personal money to automate my shop. I'll just keep at it the way I'm going. Then there'll be 30% who will say, well, you know, if at some point I want to sell my shop to somebody else, I've got to show more profit, right, in order to drive up the value of my business. So I better automate a little bit, right, but leave enough room for somebody else to come in to do an even bigger job and fund that. So I am going to invest. And then there's going to be about 20% of print shops who are going to say, you know what, I'm never going to sell. I'm going to be one of the ones who's going to survive and do really well. And so I am going to invest heavily in automation and in digital printing technology in order to make sure that I'm going to be as cost efficient as possible and able to add, you know, value to my customers through the ability to be very timely and remove all the pain points that exist today in doing business with a commercial printer. Frankly, I don't know about you, but if you go to a commercial printer to try to order a piece of print, it's not so easy, right? You have to sit down with them, tell them what you need, talk about the design, and they come back, give you a quote, and you want to adjust it because you want a lower price. I mean, it's a very time-consuming process. So the more you can automate that from the very beginning of taking a job in to the point where you ship the job, the better off you're going to be.
Okay, so I think then from a manufacturer's perspective, like Kyocera, for us, it's more than the target to find that real entrepreneur again, and in order to get that journey going.
Yes, absolutely. Because if somebody isn't interested, you're not going to be able to change their mind. So it's a cultural mindset. And, you know, I mentioned age, but it's not always age. It's really the mindset, right? Where do I want to take my business? And am I, you know, do I have enough energy and capital at the end of it all to really, you know, put my next generation on a right path, right, to grow in the future?
Good. I think that's a perfect statement to close this session with you, Marco. Thank you very much for your contribution. And then, look forward to meeting you again, probably in person. And then we'll move on to the next guest, which is Morten Reitoft.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah, bye. As you've been guest, you've been here since yesterday.
Yes.
Hitting the ground running, already visiting one of our latest customers here in NL, making a nice documentary that you will publish on INKISH TV somewhere down the line later after editing. The reason why I invited you here is because, you've been one people who are able to travel lately, so you've been continuing to visiting customers, manufacturers, getting all kinds of impressions on what's happening in the market in terms of its development. So I wanted to have your view on where we sit in terms of inkjet development in the market space.
Thank you very much, Marcel, and also to the team from Kyocera. It's great to be here. Actually, I think you answered the question when we spoke this morning when we were driving to the hotel about the development of inkjet. And it's mainly because when you look at inkjet, people invested in inkjet and digital in general with some expectations. Of course, you do your calculations, your spreadsheets, figuring out whether it's worthwhile investing in. And what you experienced is the same as I experienced, that people actually utilize the technology way more than they planned, which is quite interesting, mm-hmm. right? And I think it comes down to the fact that the people that are investing in inkjet are to some extent front runners, first movers. They really would be on top of technology because they can see where the market is developing. And I think that is very, very important to understand that when the demand is changing, the technology serving the demand is changing as well. I think that is what we see. So mm-hmm. the first movers, they get business ideas, they get new ideas for how to utilize the technology even further when they first invested in it.
Good. And as I was also mentioning the topic about the inkjet promise, do you have an opinion that inkjet, as it is right now, already delivers on that promise?
It is very strongly on its way anyway. Kyocera is one example of a company delivering. I think that one of the reasons why I find your TASKalfa 15,000C quite interesting is because it's the first cut sheet inkjet device that has a similar footprint to what we know from toner-based printers. It has a very similar front end to what we know from toner-based printers. So it is a shift from a more expensive technology to a more say affordable technology also for running high print runs. And of course, when you see that, that is a journey. Of course, all the inkjet devices we see from not only from Kyocera but also from Canon, from Ricoh, from HP, the technology itself delivers different kinds of outputs for different kind of applications. But that is just great, because that means that we can have a business that is a little bit more tailored to the customers we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. What you already did is also prepare a presentation to guide us a bit through your market view. So
or at least my crippled mind, right?
Yes, of course. So now we'll go through that and then discuss a few questions around it.
Yeah, and just for the audience, we decided, Marcel and I, this morning, that we will not do it like a presentation from A to Z, but basically use the slides as a talk track for hopefully interesting discussion, right? So the first I have. Can you move? Okay, I just see here. I have said before we're going to talk about the journey, we have to understand where we are. It's always nice when you sit in the car and you want to drive somewhere that you know the starting point, right? And when we talk about the inkjet landscape, I have defined it. It could probably be defined even broader. But if you look at it right now, there's a toner-based, there's some offset-based, and some inkjet. And each of the technologies have its advantages and disadvantages. If you try to understand a little bit about the reasons why inkjet is suddenly very attractive technology, it's not just because of the technology, but also because the market is changing. So for the next two slides, I want to talk a little bit about that. So the first thing, if you talk about toner, is of course the cost. In most toner-based printers, you have a click-based price. That means that basically, whether you print 1 copy or 500 copies, the price per piece is almost the same, right? And the problem with that is that the scalability of job sizes is not really valuable to do, because at some point other technologies become cheaper to produce. So I think that a lot of PSPs who own both toner-based technology and offset technology, at some point they will change from one production method to another production method, unless they have variable data or other reasons for doing so. With toner-based, we also have the speed to take into consideration, and also the format. With a few exceptions, most toner-based printers are up to the B3 size, and a good size for digital is good size for smaller print runs. But when we get a little bit bigger, sometimes that can be an issue as well. So just saying that, right? On the offset, I mean, offset is still something that we all use as a reference for quality and for diversity in the output. But everybody also understands that the setup time is still, even with the push to stop and flying plate change, still a concern that it takes a little bit more time to set up an offset machine before you have an output that is really stable and good.
But then offset is still considered to have its right place in the market, right?
Oh yes, of course, and it will have it for a long time. It will change probably, like everything else in the market will change, but I think it has a long and a bright future, and I think there will be a lot of technology and developments also in that area. The next one I have written here is basically the labor requirements. As Boer said, which you couldn't hear, was basically that he said it was mainly in the US there's a labor shortage. That's not true. I think that's practically everywhere. I talk to people I mean, maybe not in India, maybe not in some specific regions where you have a huge population, but in Western Europe, in America, in many different countries, labor is something that is there's a shortage of. And with offset, it is skilled labors, so you need to have a labor that is difficult to get. Also because the schools and the universities are they're not educating as many people as it did in the past, so that is becoming a problem. And then also the acquisition cost. It's not because an offset machine is not valuable to invest in, but the thing is that a big offset machine costs so much money, and the depreciation time is so long that the market could have changed entirely from when you bought it to when you have finished depreciated the machine, right? So that is just a few of the things that a PSP would have to take into considerations in my mind.
With offset, it's kind of difficult to have a long-term strategy once you get to that investment.
Unless you have a very specific niche that you operate in, and then you can see there's a lot. I mean, that is one of the reasons why so many, like if you look at Heidelberg, Koenig & Bauer, even Manroland, and all of the companies have been extremely focused on their growth comes from the packaging segment, because we cannot wrap our food in a right? So we need to have some kind of packaging material to manage that one. The last technology is inkjet, because inkjet is not new. A lot of people think of it as relatively new. The first inkjet devices were actually seen in the 50s. Not many people know that. I was surprised myself when I saw that when I was researching for an article I wrote some time ago. I think if you look at inkjet until now at least, I think that what had been a constraint in selling it was that it was a quality was not so high, the acquisition on the other hand really high, and the diversity when it comes to paper and formats and applications were maybe not where it should be, because basically the first many inkjet printers were mainly for transactional print and that kind of things, where the requirements were less and colors were not really something that we
more
used
supportive than really brand colors.
Precisely. So I think that it's probably not showing the entire market, but I think it gives a good stamp of where we are right now. And I think that to each of the technology you could probably add a lot of other things to it if you wanted to, but I stick with this for now at least, right? And then in that relationship, I think it's important also to think about the trends, because why is it that we are interested in looking into new technologies at all? Of course, it's always nice to go and see new equipment and see the output of it, and touch and feel and smell like we love to do in our industry. But it's basically because our customers are changing. So if you look at basically the lower print run that we see, particular commercial print right now, is something that it comes because it's possible to do it in digital. It comes because people don't want to, spend a lot of money, put it in a warehouse for books or anything that is stored. And the trend is definitely going to copy of one. You see more and more printing companies able to deliver books of one, for example, and you cannot get any lower, right?
No.
Then of course, a lot of people for many years suggested to use variable data. I think that finally now variable data is something that is definitely going to be seen a little bit more mainstream, because with higher postage rates, with GDPR and all that things, it is becoming more and more important to make sure that you can target your communication into the right segments, into things. So it will for sure be something that a lot of people see. Faster turnaround time is also given, right? And then again, the diversity, paper, formats, applications. People want to be unique. They don't want to have the same thing. So I don't think the time is right for suggesting that there's only one paper in the world, to be honest, right?
No.
And then what is also a kind of a trend is that, and the two last things is a little bit tied together, because one thing is that you see new business models. An example, I think there's a company called Mapify. It's an app where you can order maps from your city, basically, right? They actually deliver a printed map, right, to the end customer. They don't see themselves as a printing company. They are not a printing company, but the product is printed. So that is a new business model, how that can be facilitated into a printing company using APIs and webhooks and REST applications, things like that. And then we have the automation, lights out production. Because of the labor shortage, it is needed, but it's also because to be profitable, you need to be, and you want to deliver the copy of one, you need to automate as much as you can. And that is a tendency that you see in not just in the printing industry, but in the car industry, in practically everywhere you go. So these trends are kind of universal, I would say.
I would also say, with regards to the variable data part, that obviously the tool as a variable data tool has been around also for almost as long as, well, not as long as Inkjet, but for quite some time, where many of the customers still have the challenge of how to actually mine the data. It's one thing to set up a workflow, it's another thing to actually make your communication sophisticated, really targeted. So I think would that still be an opportunity for either manufacturers or print service providers to focus a bit more on that and really diversify?
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, as I said, one thing is the cost. Another thing is that if print becomes a little bit more exclusive, because everybody, I think actually that most people hate newsletters and e-marketing because it is disturbing your mindset. It is interfering in some way in kind of in your private sphere, right? And if you don't get too much spam mail in your physical mailbox, the printed piece could become something of a little bit of more exclusive kind of thing. And if you can have something that is using variable data, so you get nice printed products with variable and relevant data for you, why shouldn't that have a bright future ahead of you? Because everybody knows response on paper-based communication simply has a longer lifespan and simply a better return on investment for many brand owners.
And when we look at, for instance, the diversity of paper, but also the technology as a whole, where would you say, if you look at specifically Inkjet, was the most common misunderstanding from a customer perspective?
Oh, that's a good one. We didn't rehearse that one, did we? No. I think that we have a tendency in the printing industry to always say, okay, it is not as good as offset, or we have the offset quality thing, or how many percentage of the Pantone color space can we manage, right? And for a lot of end customers, probably not that important, to be honest, right? But we, as an industry, we should always strive to do the best. Otherwise, there's not funny to go to work anymore, right? So I think that when it comes to the expectation from PSPs when it comes to inkjet is in what spot of your company, where does it fit in? I think that I did a terrible mistake when I started talking to people about inkjet years ago, because I thought actually that the first inkjet devices were thought to be more like replacing toner-based printers, right? Like the iteration of technology. Now we get there, right? And every time I spoke to all the vendors I spoke to, they said that no, we're not competing with toner. We are simply replacing offset.
Yeah.
And I think that if that is the mission, maybe also to some extent your measures and your metrics will be like, okay, is it as good as offset? But business models and demand from customers, in my opinion, is changing so much right now that it is maybe the most important thing for a printer is to understand his or her customers' requirements for how to communicate on paper.
Yeah. So what you're saying also is that in terms of technology, it's not like a one-size-fits-all technology. You have to specifically look at your applications, about what you're producing, on which material, which media you're producing it on, to decide actually what is the right technology, what's the right maybe even for your application type.
Yeah, 100% sure. As you mentioned, I'm so fortunate to be with Drukkerij yesterday in Amsterdam, south of Rotterdam. They have 2 offset machines. They have, I think they had 6 or 7 toner-based printers, and now they have invested in the TASKalfa. And it in 5 weeks it ran more than 1 million print, which is quite a big in itself. They have also decided to invest in a Canon IX 3200. Why have they decided to go inkjet and having 2 different vendors? Because 2 machines offer different products and different qualities and different values to the market. So that makes perfect sense that if you can't get one machine that fits all, you buy the machines. And the acquisition cost of the digital printing printers are probably way more competitive than when you're investing in offset. And the relationship you need to have with the vendors has to be a long-term relationship, because you're not buying a box, you're buying a relationship and some certainty that the technology continues developing and supporting the platform they have chosen. So I think you have a bright future ahead of you guys.
No, that's what we get, and at least also when we look at the feedback of most of our customers, is that we are tending to build that partnership. Just also because there's always a continuing question after the installation. Especially as inkjet is to be quite different than, for instance, a toner machine. Also quite different than offset in relation to, especially what we addressed in the beginning, automation of the workflows, integration of existing workflows, how to handle certain job types, job commands, but also in terms of color management, for instance, it's quite managed quite differently. So all what you said in the beginning, they start with a certain application in mind and then want to expand their business, and with that question always comes additional questions about how to develop further. So, and we are, of course, happy to do that, because we are also more interested in a long-term relationship instead of just dropping a box on the floor.
I think that is one of the advantages of many Japanese companies, is that when they have decided to go in a certain direction, they have the patience and also some often to support a long-term investment in the market, and that is probably the biggest security you can have as a PSP, that you have a vendor that supports the business for a long time. Right?
Yeah, correct.
Let me show you the next slide. I think you will like that too, because we were talking a little bit about, we have already started talking about the technologies. I said to myself, okay, let's try to think of the dominating technologies and what kind of applications. And I have made some fat red arrows, and they, Marcel, these are to show it's not a
negative, or?
Yeah, it's not a reference to the market development based on facts. It's based on what I think, and you can agree or disagree. That's fine. But if you look at commercial, I think there's a downward trend in general, not to any specific segment in the market, but it is definitely a trend that the commercial print is seeing challenges. We spoke about funny just before that, the yellow pages and the phone books are gone. Some other applications that were typical in print has gone, so the volume is changing. One of the slides that the audience didn't see from Marco Boer is so that the paper supply and also the paper shipping is dramatically falling, and of course that is trends that support what we just talk about here, right? And in commercial, I think still that offset is dominating, but it's decreasing, rapidly decreasing. Then you have toner. I think it's a growing market, but the cost is still high. Not the acquisition cost, but the running cost is a little bit high. And then you have inkjet, which is still relatively new in the commercial space, but is growing. That's my opinion. And I will come back to in a little moment why it is, even if you're a commercial printer, really, really interesting to invest in inkjet. Then we have folding carton. You have offset dominating and increasing or stable. I think the toner and inkjet is still like early days. You see a lot of printers buying both the larger format indigo machines that can do it in toner based, and you also see some of the inkjet suppliers producing equipment and that can be used in folding carton. And a little bit the same about the corrugated market, except that it's more like flexo that is dominating, I think, for the majority of it. And then you can see labels. That is almost, I think there's a huge percentage of labels today produced. So this is just a few of the trends. I think it's quite important. So I think that is what is important in this for the PSPs to understand, is that how do we face the challenges, basically. Right? I think that digital print and digital binding is simply a necessity. It may not be tomorrow, but it is within a few years it will be dominating. I'm pretty convinced about it. So in order to do that, you need to focus on workflow automation. You need to think about IoT, Internet of Things, Industry 4.0. Robots will be on the work floor, and cobots, so you can collaborate with them. And the printers, they need to have a digital mindset. And what is a digital mindset? Mindset is basically using everything that can be into a computerized kind of environment, should be using that kind of mindset. And the biggest problem here is labor, again, because if you come into a printing company today, you have young people, old people like myself, and sometimes even older people, and we all have to learn how to get into that mindset in order for a company to fully. Oh, that was probably me. What did I do now? See, I just. Great. Yeah. The digital mindset is simply a necessity for ESPs to get into. Automation lights out production. Yeah, one thing is we can't get the labor. The second thing is also we want to get the things produced as affordable as possible. So that is part of it. New business models, sales strategies, and revenue models is a given. We cannot price our models on cost plus models anymore. We need to think about the value we create to our customers. That is a tremendously big challenge, in my opinion. And then, as I said before, the new different relationship with vendors and customers or PSPs need to change. You have a long-term relationship in a totally different way than you have in the past. I'm totally convinced about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially also, as we mentioned also before, if you look at the workflow automation, which is a necessity if you want to counter the part of the labor, I think there's still a lot of opportunity to improve the workflows.
Yeah.
The whole work process is to come to an optimized result.
It's funny that you mention it, because I often talk to printing companies that believe that they produce something that is so special that it can't be automated.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking that, okay, if we look at our industry, we have all the processes from getting a customer into the company, delivering files, making sure that the files are actually printable and on the machine, right? Just that process is very similar to almost every customer you have in the world, right? It's typically not the printing, it's often in the binding that you see the biggest challenge. Mm-hmm. And you can see that all the big major printing suppliers today are building machines that are integrated to the printing devices, so you can have almost completely finished products out of the machine, regardless whether it's boxes or books or stitched magazines or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it will go that way.
Yeah, because that's probably also the reason why you see the advantage of digital combination with complete workflow and finishing, that you look more at the total cost of print instead of looking at the specific price per click or price per page in the printing factor.
Exactly.
The print portion of the total cost of print is about, I think, 30%.
Yeah.
So if you want to save money, if you want to be more cost efficient, you would rather look at the total process, integrated process, instead of focusing on the print part only.
That is true, but to that I also want to add, because it's important to understand that sometimes when you talk to a brand owner, they see the entire value as you spoke about. But a print buyer doesn't look at that. Just look at the print, right? And
sorry, you're muted.
Okay. Seem to have I tell you, we rehearsed everything and it worked fine this morning.
Yes, yeah, we did.
That is a shame. No, so just to follow up, I think that the paper shortage and the increased prices on paper, of course, on the short term is extremely valuable. But in the long term, basically means that because everybody is in the same boat, so the brand owners need to buy the paper and the print regardless of the price, as long as it has a value to it, right? So let's see. I have 2 more slides. Actually, what have I done here? Yeah, 2 more slides. So the future, that was actually the question you asked me.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I'm a little disconnected. It was just like for a second, when you have people around yourself and the technology doesn't work, you get a little bit disturbed.
Disturbed,
right?
yeah.
So the future is basically you can choose to do nothing, right? That is probably not the wisest thing, but I think that what you will see is lower profits, because as we spoke about, the market is changing. I think that you will see higher overheads, because since you're not automating, you will need more people to do the same work or more work. Then you will see a lower production volume because of the market trends that you see in general, and you will see more competition based on price. Because if you can't compete on anything else, price is probably the one that you can compete on. If you do invest in digital automation and in the future of yourself and your own company, I think you will see higher profits per product. I think you will have lower overheads because you have maybe not lights out production, but you have a highly automated manufacturing company. And you will see a lower production volume as the ones that don't do anything. But since you have a higher profit per product, I still think it could be a very valuable business for you to invest in this one. And you will probably have less competition, because everything I'm talking about here, not all printing companies are ready to do these changes. So the ones that do this, I think they will be the ones that will own the market for a long time before the rest follows by. And therefore, I think that Kyocera and your colleagues in the industry have a lot of advantages when it comes to selling and also giving guidance to your potentials and customers, because I think there's a lot of opportunities out there.
Yeah, so like we discussed this morning, it's quite a conservative industry, and we are looking for the entrepreneurship again.
Yeah.
So the ones who are really want to move the business forward,
Yeah.
And are really looking to optimize their processes, and the early adapters who try new things and get the advantage of developing that market as a first player.
Precisely, yeah. So I hope you like what I have prepared.
Yeah, no, I like it. Obviously, the question is to the audience if
they like it or if
this helps them. Yeah,
Yeah.
Obviously the objective was to help them,
Yeah.
especially the ones who are now looking and considering investments,
Yeah.
to how to look at the landscape, how to make that comparison between technologies and decide what's best for them.
I think the most important takeaway, if you're listening to this, I think the best thing you can do is just speculate a little bit about the things you do yourself. I mean, do you go online when you bank? Do you buy your travel online? Do you do most of your business electronically today when you communicate with governments and municipals and other companies? I mean, the answer is yes, right? And then you can speculate for yourself. Do you think that print runs will increase and grow higher or bigger, or do you think that the market is actually, regardless of what type of product, will change? There's the environmental thing that we didn't talk about, but I think waste. I think that if you go into the textile, I think that it's more than 40% of all textile in the world is waste. And I'm just saying that I don't know how much it is on paper, but I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of waste on paper as well. And if we can produce what people need for the purpose they need it for, I think it's obvious that they have to go digital. They have to automate. They have to go the way that we've talked about today. But if you have doubts about it, just think about for yourself where you think the future will be, and then maybe you come to some of the same conclusions as I have, and a lot of other people. I can't take a patent on everything, right? But I'm just trying to realize when I see traveling and visiting a lot of printing companies that some of the printing companies today in the world, I tell you, they are there now, fully automated, from workflow to print to binding to shipping, in ways that you can't even think of. That's simply amazing, to be honest.
So that kind of brings us to our last guest speaker of today, who actually looked already into the future, made that journey, and also made his decisions. The customer that you visited yesterday, Drukkerij Verloop. So we found them also very willing to cooperate with us and to explain.
And I tell you, it was fun being there yesterday because it was a relatively small foot space on that printing company. I forgot to ask them how many people there worked there, but probably 50. We can ask.
We can ask.
But it was fantastic because they have all the and it was just fantastic to see. So we're going to talk to Gertjan, who is I think operational director, and he's the one that had the discussions with you and recommended his management to invest in Inkjet, and I think they had just started a new journey, quite exciting. So, are you there, Gertjan?
Yes.
Okay, so we are here with Gertjan from Verloop Drukkerij. Is that correctly pronounced?
Yeah, I think so. Well, it's still a bit English, but
okay, still a little bit English. Okay, so Gertjan, it was a wonderful thing to meet you yesterday, and your wonderful company and colleagues. So how are you today?
Very good, thank you. It was wonderful to have you here. We are happy to let other people see all about the machine. Yeah.
And you said it was still running, so I take that you make a lot of money on it, right?
I hope so. No, yeah, I think it's running behind me now. Yes.
Fantastic. One of the things I would like to learn a little bit and understand from you is that your company, for people who haven't been there, it's a company with I think you have 2 offset machines, and was it 5 or 6 the toner-based presses, and you have a lot of equipment. Why did you choose to go into Inkjet?
Mostly it was because we think that the development in toner is on its height, and it can be further being developed. So we are choosing for technology which is in a status that it can only improve the next years. So,
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but when you have got the TASKalfa for like 5 weeks now, and you have already printed more than 1 million copies. So I take that it has been a proven technology with you already.
Yeah, that's right. And maybe it's too early, but if you look at the uptime, and it's very efficient, almost no downtime, and very productive. So we are happy about that.
And
Yeah,
when you look at the printer, one thing is of course the uptime and how it operates, things like that, and the volume, of course. How is it from, I mean, if you look at how is it to use, is it easy to use or is it difficult to use?
now the use is very easy because yeah, the rip is from Fiery, and yeah, that's our operators are familiar with that. It also looks maybe it looks like a toner equipment because the engine is different, but the usability is the same that we are used to. So this machine makes it very easy to use, and mostly the difference is the cost efficiency, and for example the maintenance that you put on it, that makes the difference, and for sure also the profiles that you have to make on paper. You have to know how you get the most quality of it. But the people of Kyocera have learned, our operators, how to work with it. It's very easy and very fast. So now it's up and running, and we are making money with it, as you said before.
Fantastic. If you look at, I mean, because one of the things that I spoke to Marcel about here at the webinar was that sometimes you invest in equipment for specific applications. If you look at the TASKalfa 15,000C, what is your opinion about what kind of applications is it particularly suitable for?
Yes. So, as you said before, we have a lot of digital printers the last couple of years. So we are growing in that segment of applications, and all kinds of stuff from little program books, little magazines, even how do we say it? Stuff like I can't find the word in the English, but stationery, for example. It's also possible to make on the printer, because we have selected now most substrates are offset paper. It's also possible that you use coated paper, but then you have to choose for print optimized paper. But on offset paper, we have a lot of substrates used now. Yes.
So what you say is based. So what you say is that the majority of what you print on the machine right now is on offset paper, but you have the ability to print on coated paper if it's pre-treated.
Yes, that's right. Yes. So you have to know the right. You can go the right paper to produce on it. Yes.
When I was at your place yesterday, one of the things I really liked was that you print a lot of theses and books.
Yeah, that's right.
How is it to take the output of the printer and then use it in your binding equipment afterwards? Is that also relatively easy and without any major difficulties?
Yes, it's better than the paper that's coming out of toner machines, because that was heated and this one is not. It's different because it's with ink, but the paper is more steady coming out of the machine than that we're used to on toner machines. So also in the binding and in the finishing of it, it's very easy to use. Yeah.
Will you need to let it dry before you can bind it?
No, it's dry when it comes out of the machine. Therefore, you have to know how to make the right profile on the paper and that's kind of stuff. But if you know how to do that, then it's easy to get the right amount of ink on paper that it's dry when it comes out of the machine. Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions to Gertjan?
Yeah, well, obviously I also was interested as we are talking about journeys.
Mhm.
And I know also that they took quite some time to decide on where to go with the future. So my question for Gertjan was also, what were his concerns when he was starting the investigation?
Very good point, right?
Yes, well,
Yes.
that's up to Gertjan to decide, but that's what I'm curious about.
So can you repeat the question for me?
Yeah, so when you started your journey about new technology and looking for the future of verloop offset, what were your major concerns, especially when you were investigating Inkjet?
Well, our major concern was the cost efficiency. It has to be cost efficient. Also, the quality is for us important. And when you look at what we are used to in toner machines, for us important in this journey was to look for a machine that also the maintenance, the downtime is a little more or less than that we are used to. So the uptime of the machine is very important because of the capacity that we need. We have to use reliable machines that printing, that making money up behind me, and not is getting down and with errors and stuff. And that's a whole different with this kind of machine. Also,
okay, so okay.
Also the sustainability was a thing with this machine. It's very low on energy, and that's for us, and I think for us all, for all of us, it's better that you also look into the future, that machines with a low footprint.
Okay, so as far as you're concerned, as you saw, the topic of today was the Inkjet promise. Inkjet delivered on its promise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good ending, wasn't it?
What is a better ending than that? No, thank you very much for your contribution, Gertjan. Very pleased that you are happy and satisfied with the choices that you've made. And yeah, I think that also for us concludes today's session.
Thank you very much. It was fun to be here.
Thank you for your contribution. Happy that you will be able to travel, and looking forward also to the contribution that you recorded at Verloop yesterday. So yeah, we'll look out for the publications on INKISH TV. So that also then concludes today's session. Thank you for all the audience to have watched this, and feel free, if you have any questions with regards to Inkjet, to Kyocera production print products, reach out to your contact person. Once you've registered, you already are known to us. So yeah, reach out to us with any kind of questions, and we'll make sure that you get all the right answers. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day.